Hi guys, welcome back to yet another fun but pretty dang jet-lagged DIY video here aboard good old Athena. If you're new to my channel, this lovely sailboat here behind me is Athena. She's a 1987 Warrior 38 that I am slap dab in the middle of refitting, the end goal being for my fiancée Ava and I to be able to move aboard and start cruising. Speaking of my amazing wife-to-be, Ava, she is the reason I'm a little bit jet-lagged because I only just landed back here in Denmark about 2 hours ago after having spent 2 wonderful weeks with her in the US. And as always, when I come home from the US, I have brought some goodies back with me. When I say goodies, I of course mean boat goodies, stuff for Athena. A lot of the stuff that's in here is about half the price in the US compared to here in Denmark. So let's get this thing hauled up the ladder. Okay, let's get this duffel bag emptied. Again, if you're new to my channel, I know the interior here looks pretty messed up. That is because I tore out most of the interior earlier this summer to make some structural repairs. The good news is I am almost done with those structural repairs, and that means I can start the rebuilding phase, which is going to be a lot of fun, and hopefully transform all of this mess into something that resembles a sailboat. Just to get everybody caught up, so far this summer has mainly been spent reinforcing some structural members here on the inside of the hull. In the last video I published, I mentioned that this was the last structural member, but there is actually another structural member right there. The reason I mentioned this was the last structural member is because the core inside of this one is nice and dry, so I don't technically need to reinforce it. But the thing is, now is my chance to do that, because if I want to do that after I've put the new cabin sole in place, it is going to involve some pretty major surgery to get access to this. So yeah, you guys are in for yet another laying up glass video. I'm pretty sure you guys are sick and tired of seeing me lay up glass by now, as am I. The good news is that this is the definitive last structural member. There are no more structural members aft of this. What you see down there is just a piece of plywood to separate the engine compartment from the rest of the boat. So after this one, we are truly done and we can start rebuilding. I said we were going to take a look at the goodies inside of the bag here, so let's just start by doing that. This is actually not something I have purchased. This is a gift from Ava's sister's husband, and this is a pretty cool gift considering our future cruising plans. This is not terribly interesting, but I've started stockpiling merino wool clothing for cruising the higher latitudes. The interesting stuff is hiding a little bit further down here. For instance, this guy right here. Actually, there is 2 of them, and these are the emergency bilge pumps I mentioned in the last video. These are 4,000 gallons per hour. I know as soon as I add a bit of head to this, meaning as soon as the pump has to raise and lift the water out of the boat, I'm not going to get the full 4,000 gallons per hour, but I still think this is going to work out pretty well. For these 2 bilge pumps and the 2 diaphragm bilge pumps I showed you in the last video, I decided to spring for a dedicated 12-volt distribution panel just to clearly separate all of the pumps away from the rest of the 12-volt stuff. And then of course the thermal fuses on this is going to get replaced with an on-off-on switch. There is also 100 feet of 14 gauge triplex marine cable in here, tinned. This is for the AC stuff here aboard the boat. Hopefully I'll get to run this coming winter. And then last but certainly not least, a new Bluetooth speaker for working here aboard Athena. This should hopefully help preserve my sanity. There is nothing really wrong with my old Bluetooth speaker except for the fact that it cuts out every once in a while and it's a little bit too low in the volume, so that's kind of annoying, but yeah, now my sanity should be preserved. To be frank, I feel pretty swirly in the noggin right now, and I don't think that's all that weird considering that I haven't slept for 26 hours and there is a 9-hour time difference between LA and Denmark, so that's also gonna mess up your head a little bit. So before I start juggling around power tools, I better go ahead and get a good night's sleep. But yeah, tomorrow we'll get started prepping that last structural member. Today is actually not tomorrow. It is a couple of days later. I'm feeling a lot better. That's the good news. The bad news is I've had a lot of non-boat related deadlines this week. I had planned on painting the surface underneath this piece of cabin sole and also getting the cabin sole adhered to the boat this week, but there is simply not enough time. I do still want to prep and fiberglass that last structural member. Yesterday, before heading to bed, I watched the latest video from Boatworks Today. In that, I saw Andy using a super fancy festool sander to prep a fiberglass surface for laying up more glass. That festool sander looked amazing, and it looked like it had very good dust management, but I'm pretty sure it's also horrendously expensive. At least they are over here. Now, if you care about speed and you don't want to spend a lot and you're not too worried about dust, I would recommend going for something like Mr. Angle Grinder here with some of these flat 36 grit paper discs on there. I prefer the flat ones over the flappy ones, and if you want to take care of some of the dust, you can always add one of these dust shrouds. For prepping a fiberglass surface where you don't necessarily care too much about the surface finish, for instance, if you're going to be laying up more glass, I would stick with something like this or the fancy festool tool if you've got a lot of money. But I would steer away from a random orbital sander unless you're going to be prepping an area that's smaller than, say, the size of a US quarter. The random orbital sander is going to be way too slow, and sanding fiberglass is no fun. So the quicker you can get done, the quicker, well, you'll be done. I totally get why Andy is using that awesome looking festool tool. He's inside of his workshop. He doesn't want a lot of dust floating around. That makes perfect sense. Now here aboard Athena, where everything is already dirty, grimy, and covered in dust, I don't really care that much. So using Mr. Angle Grinder with the dust shroud on here is good enough for me. As many of you know, sanding is a subject that's near and dear to my heart. And when I saw Andy using that super cool tool, I just thought I'd throw my opinion into the mix and give his channel a little bit of a shout out because I really enjoy his videos. I'll leave a link for his channel down in the description. Now, enough procrastinating. Let's get to that structural member. As you can see, I need to remove yet another little piece of the old cabin sole before I can prep the surface. It is time for a time lapse. It is Saturday morning, aka Big Glass Day. Yesterday, after I'd finished sanding the last structural member, I filled in all of the holes with some plywood and a bit of thickened epoxy. I don't really need these holes filled for strength. I need them filled so that I'll have something to wet out the glass on, so that I have something to press against. So this should be all ready. This morning when I arrived at Athena, I noticed that she was in a little bit of a state. It looked like a freaking bomb had went off in here. It was a giant mess. I tidied all of that up and used the reclaimed space to set up for the glass I'm going to be laying up today. I've got all of my glass and my tools ready, and I picked up some more paper cups, so I should be set up for the next 6 to 8 hours. All that's left to do now is to pull the epoxy out of my heating box and get started. Good morning, guys. It is a beautiful Sunday morning and it is now official. I am done, definitively done with the structural repairs underneath the cabin sole. You guys have been along for the entire ride, so I don't need to point out how big of a job this was, but it feels absolutely amazing to have finished it. Even knowing all of the time and energy I've put into this, I would still say that it's easily been worth it for the peace of mind. If or when the wooden core inside of these structural members decide to disintegrate completely, well, it no longer matters. The added glass will pick up the slack. And that means Ava and I won't have to worry about the state of these structural members once we start cruising full time. Because as annoying and as time consuming as it's been to fix this issue now, well, I guarantee you it would have been much, much, much worse to take care of once we live aboard full time. So I'm really glad I got this out of the way now. So what's next on the to-do list? Well, everything that's going to get built here inside the boat, all of the interior, is going to go on top of the cabin sole. So before I can start rebuilding the interior that I've outlined on my plan up here behind me, well, I do need to get the cabin sole placed. And it'll also be really nice to have a flat surface to walk on again instead of the curved surface of the hull. After I've put in the new cabin sole, I want to replace the core in the knees because the plywood that's in here is wet and it's starting to disintegrate. So I want to replace the core in this knee and also the knee that's over here. This is where the standing rigging attaches to the hull, so it is really important that these are in good shape. With the core in the knees replaced, there's nothing standing in my way to start implementing the new layout I've got on my drawing here, which I think is going to be really cool. The good news about the knees is that I can do one of them, then I can start building the new interior on that side of the boat, and then I can do the other knee later on. And that means the repetitive content of just week after week after week after week of laying up glass should be a thing of the past. I want to thank you guys for sticking with me through this glass laying up marathon. Hopefully in the coming months the videos are going to be a little bit more diverse. But yeah, like I said, I am really glad I got this job out of the way and it feels so good to be just done with it. My plan for today is to get this area here prepped for primer so that in next weekend's video I can go ahead and install this piece of the cabin sole. But I'm going to take care of that prep work off of camera because it's just going to be a lot of grinding fiberglass. So next weekend's video is going to be some cabin sole work. I also want to get the bilge finally squared away, get that all taken care of, and I want to put in the supports that's going to go here for the cabin sole. I think next weekend's video is going to be a lot of fun. So yeah, I hope to see all of you guys on Sunday. As always, feel free to leave a comment down below, and don't forget, if you've enjoyed this video, remember to leave a like. See you!